99.9 Punk World Radio FM. We are on the air for another Elite Wrestle Talk interview. This is lucky number 25, and I gotta say, we saved the best broadcast for episode 25. We have legendary WCW wrestling veteran. We have Todd Zane. Individuals that watched Elite Wrestle Talk might remember we spoke with his brother Tony not too long ago, but now we got WCW veteran Todd Zane right here live on the radio. Todd, how you doing tonight out there in Georgia?
Hey, Brandon, I'm doing well. I tell you that introduction there, legend and all that. I don't know about all that, but yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Hey, man, it's a honestly, the pleasure. I gotta say, it's such an honor. But I do know when you say legend, you don't know all that. I know I said this to you when we were off the air, but I gotta say this one more time. You wrestle people like the Nasty Boys, Ron Simmons, the Patriot. You were on WCW television, so I don't know, man. That to me, most wrestlers only dream of doing things like that. So that right there to me makes it all legendary right there. And plus the Nasty Boys, they're crazy SOBs, man. So I mean, you stayed in the ring with the Nasty Boys. If I saw the Nasty Boys coming towards the ring at me, man, I'll be jumping over that like top rope, just like Big Show, man. One leg over and gone. Like
yeah, they were characters. I was with them a couple of times. I think that's been, I don't know, 1993, 4, 5, something like that. But long time ago. But they were characters in and out of the ring. Tough guys, legit tough guys. So, yeah, hats off to them, man. They were everything that they portrayed themselves to be. They could handle their business.
Before we actually get into the WCW days, because I know by me saying that, I'm jumping ahead of the timeline a little bit, but I got to take us right back to the very beginning where you were actually trained by your brother Tony, and I have to ask, what ultimately inspired you to pursue a career within wrestling and, of course, follow and train alongside your brother Tony?
Well, I was, I guess you could say I was the typical little brother. When I looked at my brother, he was nothing short of a superhero to me. I mean, he was pumped up. He was in the gym. He had went in the Navy and come out, and he was highly athletic. Him and his friends were always at our house, and I was always in his room when they were there, and because I wanted to be, and it's crazy because in his room, as I think about it, and I've said it before, but in his room, you had Pee Wee Anderson, who was legendary referee in WCW. Arn Anderson, Marty, was back there, and another guy I have to mention, David Jones, David McGee, but he went by David Jones in the wrestling business, had a great local career around. He had a family early on, and he never really pushed the envelope. He did some stints on Georgia Championship Wrestling, but I mean, these guys were, I looked at them like, they were idols. They were, it's my big brother. So, where he went, I wanted to go. What he did, I wanted to do. And so, I knew all these guys. I mean, I think they were coming over to the house from the time my brother was 12, and that would have made me, that would have made me 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That made me 7 years old, something like that. So a little bit of distance between Tony and I. But long story short, when he got in the wrestling business, I started traveling to the towns with him. I was like 15, so I really didn't have a driver's license, but I would drive them, and met the guys that, my granddaddy took us to the Memorial Gym, and I remember meeting Bob Armstrong, and I was like, wow, and I told Bob Armstrong, didn't really know him, and I was getting kind of, I was in the room, I was behind the curtain, so to speak, and I said to my granddaddy, he thinks that you're the dude, and he said, tell him I said hello. Just that kind of guy, So I got to meet all these guys early on, and so yeah, so I've always been impressed with my big brother, still am. So
And I got to say as well, because I know you actually talk about being behind the curtain and seeing your brother wrestle, but do you remember actually one of the most fondest memories you shared of the early days before you got into wrestling, when your passion for it was right, where you're kind of being like, do I want to be a fan? Do I want to be like a wrestler? Like, do you remember the very early days of just being there, where you actually said to yourself, "Damn man, this is actually what I want to do."
um, I guess probably before I actually started doing it, um, they involved me in, and it's kayfabe don't exist anymore, so um, that's a shame, by the way. But
I agree. I definitely agree.
so I can speak openly about it, and I mean, but anyway, my brother, he AKA Mr. Atlanta, he was a big deal at what they call Dillard's Music Park in Rome, Georgia, and a lot of people call it like the little Madison Square Garden of the South, because it drew. I mean, my God, man. I mean, if you got it, if you were booked at Dillard's, you were something else in this part of the country. But um, he was doing an angle with somebody. I can't really remember, but who it was actually. But you could actually back a van all the way up to the wrestling ring. And so the deal was, they were going to, Mr. Atlanta he was a baby face, and they were going to tie a rope around him and drag him out of the arena. And my deal, I was supposed to cut the rope. Wasn't going to let them do it. Well, we're in the South. Well, about the time it was time to cut the rope, everybody and their brother had their knife out. I didn't even have to pull the knife out. So he was like, just come down here. And I fell down on top of him, and he's talking to me, telling me, sell it. And, I start crying, and mustering up tears. And I mean, the people were just eating it up. And I don't know if Jimmy Powell, the Dirty White Boy, Jimmy Powell, great guy, big baby face then. And he pulled me over to the microphone. I'd never said a word on a microphone. And my brother had told me some things that I should say beforehand. And I went out there, and I did the interview, and the people just ate it up, man. And I was already training. I already knew. I had been taking bumps since I was 15, 14, just traveling around with them. And I just needed to know how to put the moves together. And so I already knew that. But anyway, the following week, they schedule it, I was going to take on, I remember it was David Jones, and I wrestled him because he did that to him. So anyway, that was something that really, it's kind of like playing golf. I don't know if you play golf, but if you ever hit that iron shot and you make it back up on the green that first time, you're hooked. You can't quit playing. So that's what it was for me. So that's the moment that stands out in my mind where I said, this is what I want to do.
And also, in the mid 1980s, you were actually a part of a wrestling trio called the
Wow.
Texas Outlaws alongside Rick and Eddie. For individuals who actually don't know about the Texas Outlaws, can you actually tell us the story just behind the formation and the story of this iconic trio?
Wow, you have done your research, hadn't you? I ain't seen that picture, and gee whiz. Okay, so Texas Outlaws, of course, that's Dusty and Dick Murdoch. And a big Dick Murdoch fan I am. Dusty too, but I just enjoyed Dick Murdoch. I just thought he was just the bomb diggity, as they say. But there was another tag team that was pretty much the Texas Outlaws, Joel Deaton and Hoss. And Joel Deaton was a great guy. It still is. I ain't saw Joel in years, but if he happens to be watching, I hope he's doing well. But anyway, when I started wrestling, a guy that actually helped my brother train me a little bit, Mike Golden Boy Mike Golden, lifelong, he's been a friend of ours as long as I've been in, known. I mean, just back in them days, when Mike came to Georgia, he practically lived with Tony, and they were just a great tag team back then. But anyway, Mike's the one that put the outlaw gimmick on me, and it sprung from there. And there was this guy, Rick Fuller, who didn't last too long in the business. He just seemed like a good little fit. And the guy Eddie there, faced Eddie Getz. Man, let me tell you something. There's a lot of people in pro wrestling that's made millions of dollars off of running their mouth, Paul Heyman, people like that. But I'd put Eddie up against any of them. He was that good. And he's a family man, and he just never pushed the envelope that much. But yeah, those were some good days. Those were early days, real early days. The beginning. That was the beginning. And so that combination there just kind of fell together. I actually went to high school with Eddie, so he was a guy I palled around with and played ball with, and so it was a fun little convenient little faction. We were having a lot of fun, and so that's what that was.
And I gotta say as well, just judging by that photo, you can definitely tell. Just it was very early days, but you can tell you guys were having a lot of fun. There's sometimes you can look at those old like those promo 8x10s, and you can tell that individuals didn't like their gimmick. You can just kind of tell by the vibe of it, but you can tell that you guys were really taking on the Texas Outlaws like full force.
Yeah, we were living it, man. Yeah, so we were we couldn't wait till Thursday when it was time to get in the car and start traveling. So a million stories from those days, good times. I'd do it all again. Unfortunately, I'd change a few things actually, but it's it was a good time. It was a good time. Fond memories. I still talk to Eddie to this day. I don't know what the other guy's doing. I never talked to him, but I wish him well. But yeah, Eddie and I, we're still close.
And one thing I have to ask with the Texas Outlaws, because obviously you're out there in Georgia, and these were the kayfabe days, so you were in character 24/7. Never told. Obviously, you really sold the fact that you were from Texas. Did anybody ever kind of question your accent a little bit since you're from Georgia, like from the South? Did anyone question it, or did you just full on take a Texas accent and just kind of go with it?
No, I never really got that. I just, as I said, I really liked Dick Murdoch, but I kind of channeled Stan Hansen, when I was in those independent towns. I wanted to be the wrestler that Dick Murdoch was, as far as being an outlaw, but not to kind of change gears on it or anything, but the wrestler that I really wanted to channel most of all was Dick Slater. I thought he was absolutely the very best. There wasn't anybody, and meeting him was scary. I mean, he was, if there's ever been a legit tough guy in the wrestling business, and there's quite a few of them, but Dick Slater was the man. He was legit. So yeah, that was the guy that if I was going to channel anybody. But no, nobody ever. I never had anybody say anything about my accent.
And when you actually met Dick Slater, I was wondering if you actually tell us a bit more actually about that, because I got to say, a legendary wrestler. Did he teach you a few things? Like, what was the ordeal like when you actually met him? Like, what was the conversation like?
You have these, and I guess I'm gonna throw a little stone here at some guys, but it seems like when somebody passes away, everybody wants to make sure that, they say that they knew them and they taught them so much. And, I don't know if that's just turned into a cliche or what, but I'm not about to say that. Um, but I did meet Dick Slater quite a few times. Matter of fact, learning from Dick Slater was just a matter of watching Dick Slater. I didn't have to ask him anything. I didn't have to, um, you know, um, just watching Dick Slater, listening to Dick Slater. Um, if I learned anything, it was that. But um, funny story, I'll share with you. Tony's daughter, my niece Stephanie, uh, he came and picked us up one day, and I can't remember. I guess Tony was with us. I don't know, but I just remember this. Like I say, this has been back in the early '90s. It might have been '80s. I don't know, but '90s. Um, Luna Fashawn was up in the front seat. Dick Slater was driving, and I was in the back seat. And they put Stephanie between them, and Luna had her snake with her, and we were going around putting posters out for the town. And so, I got to talk to him a good bit, riding with him and listening to him and all that. And Tony was with us quite a few times. And I'm sure Tony was with us that time, because that's how I met Dick Slater, was through Tony. And so I kept my mouth shut a good bit, but, I listened a lot. And that's how you learn in wrestling. You shut your mouth and you listen. But yeah, so she was letting Stephanie hold that snake, and I don't think Stephanie ever forgot that. And just a good time, that day. So um, I got 2 or 3 stories I could share, but that's probably the one that stands out as far as the question you're asking.
Well, when it comes to Dick Slater as well, though, I gotta say, what I remember when he actually debuted in the World Wrestling Federation, actually by defeating the Gladiator. I think it was actually on one of those episodes, and you can watch that match where he defeated the Gladiator. You can really see how much of a tough SOB this guy was. He definitely was. I always say this: he was built like a brick shithouse.
Slater?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I just, Tony, and I don't want to misrepresent or misquote, but I think, because Tony was in Mid-South at that time, I think Tony was actually in the dressing room the night that Slater put Sting's head in the toilet. So to hear Tony tell it, they sat there and he just taped his fist up. Uh, Tony used to always say, Slater, the word in wrestling, not Tony's opinion, but the word in wrestling was always Slater missed his calling, because he was a great boxer. So he sat back there and taped his fist up, and went back there, and I think Sting was painting his face. Of course, I wasn't there. I don't want to misrepresent or tell a story that I wasn't there to see. But it's pretty much common knowledge in wrestling. So.
I gotta say that is one hell of a rib, but I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to Sting, because Sting was a very tiny guy, especially back in the '80s, in the very early days of his career. So, an early Sting versus Dick Slater. I mean, I think Sting probably just tucked his tail between his legs and continue putting on his makeup again.
I don't know. I think Sting is a he's not a bad guy. I mean, my dealings with Sting in WCW was always cordial and nice, really nice guy. I think he can hold his own. I think Sting was young and probably made a mistake, and because they were cordial afterwards. They had a lot of wrestling matches together, and it's just he just made a mistake, and I'm sure it was swept under the rug at some point. But yeah, Sting's a good guy. I would say he is. From what dealings I had with him, he was a nice guy.
And speaking of WCW World Championship Wrestling, you are also most known for actually having multiple amazing matches within that promotion. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us, how did you ultimately land the contract with WCW? And of course, who was the first person to contact you about coming out to actually wrestle for them?
Well, true story, and this is the truth. Pee Wee and I want to say Mike Graham. I'm pretty sure it was. I had no idea. But me and Scott Studd, aka Scotty Riggs, was in the ring, and we had a heck of a wrestle match that night. And I think we did a time limit draw. I'm not sure. But Pee Wee would come up to Dillard's every now and then, and so I went back to back, and there they were, and talked to them, and they asked us if we'd like to come to TV Monday, and we said yeah. So I'm sure my brother probably had a little to do with it, being Tony's brother and all that, and. But we got booked on TV. And so my first match there was with Johnny B. Bad. I remember Scotty's first match was with Austin and Pillman in a tag match. And I remember being a nervous wreck. And I called Marty up and I said, "What do I do?" So this is going to segue into a funny story, but I said, "I don't understand, man." I said, "What do I do? I mean, where do I come? What should I do?" He said, "Well, I'm going to tell you, Todd, you got to be there at 4:00. It's really boring. Bring you a Sports Illustrated." At that time, Sports Illustrated. I said, "Okay." So bring you something to read. I said, "Okay." He said, "Now find me when you get there, and you can sit with me." I said, "Okay." So I come in the door, and there sits Dusty and Jody Hamilton, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I sign the little deal and walk on through, and I'm just, I'm not a mark, but I'm nervous, and there he is. There's Marty. Walk up to him. He leads me into the dressing room, and I sit down. Well, I start noticing that I'm sitting in the dressing room with Steamboat and Wyndham and Van Vader. I'm sitting with all the contract guys, all the over guys. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's nobody like me in there. And I'm thinking, where's all the guys at like me? That's what I'm thinking to myself. So the room kind of clears out. They start calling the finishes, and people are out in the hall, and I'm sitting there, reading my little magazine. I'm not talking. I hadn't said a word for 2 hours. And Marty had done got up and walked away. And so I decided, well, I'm going to go out. Well, the only person left in that dressing room is Vader. He's not saying a word. He's got his foot up on the table, and the only way I can get through is through his leg. And so I get up, and I was kind of nonchalant, and I said, "Hey, bud, hey, man, could you excuse me? I'm on." He looked up at me like I was an idiot and shoved that table all the way across the room with his leg. I appreciate that, and I just kept walking. And I found the guys like me, and I run into a guy that I knew, Larry Santos, and I said, "What am I supposed?" He's come on, so we went in this other dressing room, and there's all the guys like me, So so I fit right in then. So yeah, that was my first day there was a little intimidating. So, but yeah, it worked.
Especially when Vader almost brought Vader to him. You know, I mean, I couldn't imagine being the first day there and Vader just like pretty much like throws a table like it's a flower, man. Like, did you have did things go kind of smoother with Vader like afterwards after you started working with WCW a little bit more, or was he always kind of like that with yourself?
Um, well, I mean, if you're asking if he liked me or not, I don't know. I don't know. He was weird to me. I mean, he's dead and gone, and Lord rest his soul. And you know, it's he probably calmed down after his days in wrestling. And but back then, he was protecting his gimmick and all that. But I wrestled him a couple of times, and funny story. First time I wrestled him, um, I pulled up to Louisiana. Was in Louisiana, and I believe it was Shreveport or somewhere. And me and Tony come pulling up, and all of a sudden, my buddy Larry Santana comes running out. Him and Pee Wee. Oh my God! Oh my God! You're not gonna believe who you're working. I said, who? You're working Vader. I said, oh really? They said, yeah, but you work Vader and Vicious. I said, oh, they're going to put me over? Handicap match? They're going to put me over? And they said, no, no, no. Me and you's tagging against them. And so I thought, well, I knew I'd draw this card sooner or later because many times we had went into TV, center stage, or wherever we may be, and they had this big white board up, and they would have who was wrestling who. And if people were booked against Vader or even Vicious, you might not see them again. They'd just grab their bag and leave. Many times Vader, he'd get people in the corner and he'd do that gimmick where he was, hooking them, right? Well, he'd been giving people concussions doing that. And so anyway, it was a real shoot there, just about. You just had to know what to do with him. And but anyway, Santana said the good thing is we're on first. I said okay. So it comes time for us to go down and talk to them, and they called us down there, and Vader looked at me and he said, "Have you ever took a power bomb?" And I hadn't. I'd never done a power bomb. Wasn't no big deal though, to me. I didn't think nothing about it. And I said no. I said I've never taken a power bomb, but I've taken probably a variation of one. I'm not too scared of it. And he said, "That's it, Mike Graham. Get me somebody else. I've already broke one kid's back." Talking about Joe Thurman. Who came up with me when I began. I knew Joe very well, and he actually got married in a body cast, from what I understand. And so anyway, and I could understand that. He did. I appreciated that. But Graham looked at me and he said, "Well, you're out." And I'm standing there for a minute, and Vader says, "Yeah, I don't want to hurt nobody else. I don't want to break nobody else's back. Not going to do it." And I thought to myself, Santana looked at me and said, "You lucky." So, and I thought, no, I'm not, because all the boys was looking at me, and I said, hold on. I said, I can do this. He looked at me. He said, "You sure you can do it?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Well, let's just see." And back then I had hair. So he grabs me by my mullet and just pulls me down. Physical. He said, "You ready?" And I said, "Do it." What you're supposed to do when they jerk you up, you're supposed to do a sit-up. And I sat right up. come right up and grabbed him around his neck, just like he's supposed to do. And about that time, I felt somebody grab him by the hair of my head behind me, and it was Vicious. He said, "You see them effing lights up there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "If you ain't looking at them effing lights when we do this, we'll break your effing neck." And the backstory to this, they were about to go into an angle with Davey Boy Smith and Sting for that bash at the beach, and they were introducing the double powerbomb, and we were going to be the first ones to take it. So Vader was going to hook me up, and Vicious was going to have me like that, and they were going to, you know. So anyway, he's got me up in the air, saying all this to me. He said, "You ready?" And I thought he was going to do it right there, but he didn't. He let me down. About that time, my brother walks in. He says, "What in the F's going on?" You know, and I said, "Oh, it's cool, you know." And they're just showing me, you know, and you know, it's I don't see my brother being back in them days. He's not going back down from anybody. And then I'm not trying to put anybody over, but he thought somebody was messing with his brother, and I get it. I'd been the same way, you know, but that wasn't the case. It was just a case of, you know, him wanting to see if I really wanted to do it. So anyway, we had the match, and everything was good. I took the double power bomb. Santana took the double power bomb. We was laying there, looked at each other, and said, "Well, we did it." So, you know, so we were all good.
And it's so sad to just to know not only Vader but also Vicious is gone too, man. Passed away recently due to cancer.
Yeah.
It's sad that so many of the legends are gone, man. I met Sid Vicious, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago in Ottawa, Ontario, and honestly, I know some people say mixed things about meeting him, but when I met him, he was super nice with me, like really really nice. So I have no complaints I can say. He was super nice to me and came out, shook my hand, took a photo, signed my VHS tape of Ready to Rumble, talked with me for a few minutes. One of the coolest dudes I actually met. So I just have to say, like, if his family is watching this interview, whether now or years from now, my sincere condolences. Definitely one of the best wrestlers to do it, and I know he's up there wrestling in heaven as well.
Absolutely. You know, and the thing about it is that, you know, when back in them days, and I guess it's probably like this now, you know, ego plays a big part in being a pro wrestler, and it's hard for him to cut that thing off. And the older you get, the more grace you have for people. And you know, Leon Vader, you know, I'm sure he was good as gold, you know, outside of wrestling. And Vader, anybody, you know, it's just you know, they're protecting their gimmick. They're living their gimmick back then. And, you know, it's just like me standing up and saying, "Hey, I can do this." You know, I wasn't going to be. What caused me to do that? You know, well, I didn't want to look bad in front of the boys. You know, I was going to prove myself, you know. So yeah, you know, it's a bunch of testosterone in one big room, you know. So yeah, it's those guys deserve a lot of props, man. They made their mark in pro wrestling.
And before we jump to the next question, I just got to say we got a lot of people in the chat tossing out fan questions. I will get to those.
Wow.
So don't worry. We got some fan questions. Yeah, we do. I will say one of them is I read it. Well, that's why you saw me kind of leaning in, because I had to squint my eyes to make sure I was reading what I read correctly. So I'm still processing if I want to bring up this question or not. But it is a fan question. So later on in the interview, we will get to those. But Jerry, you literally asked this question, and this was next on my list. So, Jerry, you're getting yours answered right now. April 6th, 1994, on WCW, Saturday night, you actually went toe-to-toe with one-on-one with the legendary professional wrestler, the Patriot. Looking back on this match, can you actually tell us a bit more about what it was like working with the Patriot in the ring? And, of course, like, do you actually remember this match that you're actually watching right now?
Well, I'm watching the Nasty Boys.
Oh,
that's what's showing right now. But
that should be the one, actually.
Okay, so all right, so here's another.
My apologies, I got to mix it
No,
up.
that's fine. That's fine. If you're asking me to recall the particular match, I wrestled Dale, the Patriot, quite a few times. I don't know why that was. I really don't, but I wrestled him quite a few times. But working him was, as they say in the business, a night off. Great guy. He was actually, I know people know him from being from the Carolinas, but he went to school. If I remember right, if I remember our conversations right, he went to school in Resaca, Georgia, up above Calhoun, and we used to talk about football team but really real nice guy. And working him was, man, he was strong. He was strong, and good guy though. Good guy. I enjoyed being in the ring with him.
I gotta say, definitely one of my favorite matches that you actually did as well was actually working a Patriot. It was a short one, unfortunately, but it definitely was a hard-hitting match back and forth. I love the fact that, because I know some individuals, when they go in and they do a short match and they're the one going over, they absolutely demolish their opponent. I like the fact that the Patriot actually lets you get some moves in, lets you actually kind of showcase what you got as well, because I hate the matches where a wrestler goes in and just absolutely squashes his opponent and doesn't really give them an opportunity to kind of do anything. I like the fact it was actually a back and forth, very quick match.
Yeah, they had a thing called dark matches that they filmed, but they filmed for themselves, and I don't know if they're out on YouTube. I don't know. There's a lot of matches that I've had that I'd love to see that I've never seen that actually stand out in my mind a little bit. But they were dark matches, and for anybody that don't know what that is, back then, before digital and all this stuff, technology, while they were changing tapes, they would have a match, and that would be, they'd put somebody in the ring that they were wanting to take a look at, see how the crowd was going to respond to them. Anyway, you would get to have, a pretty decent match with that person. So I had fallen into the spot, along with my brother, of doing those dark matches. And this is going to sound a little bit, I don't want to say egotistical or arrogant, but it was one of the kindest things anybody ever said to me. Excuse me. I had 2 or 3 matches with Jim Neidhart. And the first time he came in from the WWF, and they had him do a dark match. I don't know why. But I guess they just wanted to see how the people took to him. But anyway, Greg Gagne come up to me, and kindest thing anybody ever said to me up there. He said, "Hey, you're going to be working with Jim. Jim, this is Todd. Todd, this is Jim." And he said, "I have told Jim that he wanted somebody that could do anything." He said, "And I'd recommended you." He said, "You're very good in the ring, and I told Jim you could do anything." He said, "So I'm leaving him in good hands." So I was like very, felt that was a nice thing to say. And so I went out there and had a good match with Jim. Jim had to leave and go to Japan after that match. He just wanted to secure a spot or whatever. Well, anyway, he came back, and he requested to work me again. And the first time he worked me, he didn't talk too much. He didn't talk a lot. But the second time I worked him, he talked a good bit and gave me some stuff in the ring. And same with, I think I worked him 3 times. Same with the third time. I think it was in a tag match, though. I can't remember, but he stands out as somebody I enjoyed working.
And I got to say as well, it's really cool that you actually had the opportunity to actually work with Jim the Anvil Neidhart for his first match in WCW. Like, that's actually history and such an historic moment for any wrestler to be a part of.
Yeah, it's and thank you for that. I never thought about it like that, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was like I said, it was a good feeling to work with him and say that I've worked with him. Any of those guys from New York that came down, and not everybody got to work with him, so I felt blessed to have been in the ring with him.
And when obviously that you were the first person to actually kind of bring him into WCW, like wrestling wise in the ring. So I have to ask this: like, did he compliment you or talk with you after the match back in the locker room and give you compliments on your wrestling style or in ring ability, or was it kind of just like match and you went your separate ways and didn't really talk to each other again?
No, it's you're supposed to. Um, I mean, it's just something you do. It doesn't matter if you go out into the ring and the guy busts your nose, your mouth, your eye. It doesn't matter what goes wrong, what goes right. Doesn't matter. You come back, you hug that guy's neck, and you thank him. You thank him, and that's just what you do. And so yeah, I did visit with Jim after each match, very short, um, and you have to remember too, because I respect him and his accomplishments. I'm not going to sit there and say, did you see anything I could do better or anything like that? So I don't remember our conversation, but I'm sure it was. I really appreciate it, Jim. Thank you so much, sir. Um, I enjoyed it, and I'm sure we probably hugged each other's neck, and I went my way and he went his. So that's pretty much what it was. He was I can say that he was he I don't know how you describe it. He was just had very little. He wasn't much of a talker. He was low key. So you had to really keep your ears open in the ring with him.
And obviously, I'm pretty sure you knew this question was coming because I prematurely let off the wrong video. But while we're on the topic of WCW Saturday Night, you actually wrestled the Nasty Boys alongside your tag team partner, Chick Donovan. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about this amazing match. And of course, what was it like just stepping toe to toe with the Nasty Boys?
I thought it was a lot of fun. It was. I knew what it was going to be. I mean, I knew what to expect. My job was to make them look absolutely indestructible, make them look like guys, you just did not even want to approach or mess with. That was my job. And that's what I tried to do. They were, I mean, they're just what you see right there. That's what you get from those guys. That's who they are. So that don't mean that they're bad guys or anything. It just means they're in the back. They was always laughing and cutting up, and it wouldn't know. I do remember because that was the first time I ever wrestled them. I remember that, and I remember Knobs came up to see. No, which one's Sags? Knobs is the blonde headed one, right? Yeah,
I
I
believe
thought
so,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, blonde headed one. I don't mean no disrespect by that. I can't remember. But
It's a great way to decipher them. I mean, from behind, if they had the same hair color, it'd be hard to decipher because they wear the same.
absolutely,
They wear the same attire. So
yeah. But they, I remember them coming up to me, and all I remember is we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and then they'd come change it. Now we're not going to do this. Now we're going to do this to Chick. Now we're going to do this to you. Now we're going to do. So you really didn't know going, but it was okay. So you kind of know what you're getting when you go out there. So yeah, it was blast working with those guys.
was that your only time getting the opportunity to wrestle the Nasty Boys? I do know you say there's a lot of there's a lot of dark matches that are currently still in the vault of your actual wrestling repertoire. So was this the only time you had a chance to wrestle the Nasty Boys? Did you have other opportunities that unfortunately no longer will not, as of right now, no have not seen the light of day?
I'm sure I don't think I ever wrestled them in a dark match, but I think I wrestled them one other time. As I just remember, I remember maybe me and another guy. I can't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure I wrestled them more than once. But like I said, you don't really. I mean, I saw a match. Who was it? Somebody sent me a match. I have that happen every now and then. Somebody will send me something, As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even have any of my old wrestling stuff. One time, my daughter um, put together a lot of stuff, or she sent me a lot of stuff, or she showed me where some stuff was, because I used to be real internet illiterate. So, um, and I didn't even know all this stuff was on YouTube. So I didn't really keep anything. I remember, and I've mentioned, God rest his soul, Larry Santana 2 or 3 times. I love Larry Santana. Me and him was good friends, and fell out of touch over the years, and he recently passed away. I wish I could have seen him one more time. Well, I used to have a lot of laughs with him, but um, he always brought those. Remember those little disposable cameras? You might not be old enough to
Yeah,
remember that.
I remember those. Yeah.
Well, Larry would bring those, and I took. Hey Todd, can you take a picture of me and Bobby Eaton? I'd take a picture. Hey Todd, can you take a picture of me and Kevin Sullivan or whatever? He'd get all these pictures while we was there. And I guarantee you they're hanging on his wall, and I probably took half of them. But I never would do that, because I would say, man, don't you feel like a mark doing all that? But I wish I would have done it now. But because I met a lot of people, and it would have been nice to, have those memories. So anyway, I'm glad for YouTube, but I don't remember. I think I wrestled those guys, the Nasty Boys, a couple of times, but I don't remember.
And one of the last WCW questions I have before we actually move on is, obviously you were a part of WCW from the very early 90s right up into the mid 90s. Obviously, as everyone knows, 1994 excuse me, was a time in WCW where they actually that's when they really started poking the big bear, which is the WWF. They started poaching the talent. Obviously, the Hulk Hogan situation, you had Lex Luger coming over and a bunch of others. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about the locker room around these times, like how, because obviously they were poking the bear, things were getting stirred up. How was the direction of the locker room going right before the big Monday Night Wars actually happened? Was it a change backstage, or did it kind of just feel the same as it always did?
You really didn't know. Um, there's cliques everywhere you go, and wrestling's no different. And I'm sure if you were in the right clique, you knew what was happening. You probably felt job threatened, because when you bring in high price talent, low price talent might bite the bullet. So things were about to change. It was more around '95, I believe, though, and they started going toward a more competitive style match, the job style matches, where people were just getting squashed, and they were fewer and fewer. Wrestling was changing, so I didn't notice, because I was at a point in my life to where I was wanting to make a change myself. So I voluntarily jumped off the boat, and I had a family, and had a daughter. Wrestling tends to break families up, and I didn't want that to happen to mine, and but it did, and but anyway, I decided I wanted to come home and pour more time into that than I had been on the road. I was somewhere close to 30, and when you think when you turn 30, or you get close to 30, you think it's over anyway, and it's just beginning. You don't realize it. So yeah, I'm sure there were some people who felt that way, but I couldn't really speak intelligently to that.
And during that time, did you actually have any run-ins? Like, did you get the opportunity to cross paths with Hulk Hogan in the locker room around between '94 and '95? Or because I do know, I heard rumors that Hulk Hogan had his completely own locker room. I don't know if that was the NWO days or at the very beginning, but did hear that he had his very own personal locker room. So I don't know if you had the opportunity to really cross paths with him at all.
I know that for a fact, because one of the last couple of shows that I did, he was actually supposedly there, and I never laid eyes on him. So I was wanting to, I was wanting to say I'd been in the room with him, and technically I was, but I don't think I ever laid eyes on him. Maybe I saw him walking down the hallway. I don't know, but I don't remember it. So, but he was supposedly there.
And also, as well, you are actually a member of another phenomenal stable called the Peachtree Mafia. I was wondering if you can actually just tell the individuals that aren't quite familiar with Peachtree the origin story behind it, and of course, how did you actually become a member of this fine stable?
Wow. How in God's name are you doing this, man? Okay, so I mentioned Mike Golden just a bit ago. Mike may be watching. What's up, Mike? So Mike's like another brother. Uh, love Mike. Uh, um, but anyway, he and Tony, Mr. Atlanta, um, were working for Southern Championship Wrestling, um, and they put them together, and they became the Peachtree Mafia, and they were quite dominant in the South. As a matter of fact, Dick Slater, Tommy Rich, um, Jerry, big guy Jerry. I can't think his last name, but he's not with us anymore. He actually owned Southern Championship Wrestling. Excuse me, it'll come to me in a minute, but a lot of big names there. Randy Rose, Paul Heyman, um, um, just a host of wrestling legends, especially in the South, were encamped at this wrestling promotion, Southern Championship Wrestling. They put Tony and Mike together, and it just elevated from there. Um, and they were the Peachtree Mafia. Well, a few years ago, um, we had all been out of the business, and we got thrust back into it, but kind of behind the curtain, behind the scenes, and um, bunch of we were around a bunch of young guys that just trying. We done got to the point where we're trying to teach some stuff, how to get heat, and so the best way to get heat or show them how to get heat is just to go out there and show it to them. So we put together the Peachtree Mafia again, and now I'm in it, and a couple of more guys, and we're out there setting the place on fire. Um, I'm proud to say that us old guys took a little promotion running about 50 people, and we run it up to between 400 and 500 people every week for a long time, and it was based on the stories we were telling, the heat we were drawing, and the talent we were building, and we're pretty proud of that. That's a good way to put a feather in your cap when you're walking away. But yeah, that's how I got into the Peachtree Mafia, and I'm glad I got to. So, and they're pretty popular around here right now. So, but we're not in it anymore. But they still talk about it, obviously, because somebody's obviously asked a question about it. So there you are.
And also, you were actually very heavily involved with your brother's wrestling company, Primetime Wrestling, out there in Georgia. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about working alongside your brother at Primetime Wrestling, because I know obviously you and your brother go back. He obviously trained you. You obviously tagged with your brother in WCW as well. But what is it like working behind the scenes with your brother Tony, and just working with Primetime Wrestling?
Well, I can tell you on a little side note, you kind of brought it there. Working with my brother in WCW was an absolute dream come true. I mean, it could not have been any. I mean, to actually tag with your brother and have good wrestling matches in WCW with, you know, I remember we worked with the Cole Twins a few times. We worked with um, Scorpio and Bagwell a few times. We worked with Brad Armstrong and Frankie Lancaster. I mean, just a bunch of people, and they were wanting to work with us, and it was pretty cool, pretty cool. So but anyway, that was the best time I had in WCW, was working with him, because it felt good. But yeah, working with Tony in Primetime Wrestling, that's where we got to, just create what we wanted the people to see and hear, and we set boundaries, and I'm a firm believer, and I know this goes into the behind the curtain a bit, but if the boys are to get a finish, they're to get it from the guys, from the booker, from the shot caller. You can't let, as they say, the prisoners run the prison. It's you gotta have some control. So we tried to run it just like we had always been taught to run a wrestling promotion. We were always there with Ole Anderson and Dusty, Mike Graham. I've mentioned him a few times. Gagne, Dundee. Of course, my brother's got a pedigree bigger than that. He's been around Bill Watts and a lot of those bookers, and that was always poured into me from him. You had to have structure in the dressing room, and a lot of these young guys today don't understand that structure. Matter of fact, they're offended by it, and that's what's wrong with a lot of independent wrestling today. Nobody knows about that structure because a lot of guys like us aren't around anymore, and the ones that try to do come around get frustrated by the attitudes of and there's a lot of good young independent wrestlers out there. I'm not knocking anybody, but we're just, if we're going to be at the helm, that's how we're going to do it. We have a proven track record. We've always been able to tell good stories, but that's going back to your question. That was just a lot of fun to do with my brother, and I don't know that we'll ever go that way again, but because we're both living life and enjoying our family. So, but I wish the wrestling business a ton of luck, man. I hope it goes on from now on.
And also, while we're on the topic of primetime wrestling, I came across this post during a Facebook search that in 2023, Primetime Wrestling actually had a feud going on with a fellow Georgia promotion called NAWA Classic, where yourself, Mr. Atlanta 1, and Mr. Atlanta 2 actually infiltrated their venue. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about that ordeal, and of course, within these past 2 years, did you guys happen to hash things out, or is it still the Georgia wars going on over there?
No, there's no war going on. I don't think that there ever has been. I think there's been a disagreement, so to speak, between some guys. I mentioned earlier about the Peachtree Mafia, how we were able to take some guys and teach them and get heat, and we were able to. It was with that promotion that we were drawing all that. They called their promotion something else at that time, but then they decided to change the name, but it was the same promotion, same people, and never really had no bad feelings for nobody. Still don't have any bad feelings, but when people misrepresent you, and they for their own personal gain, you can't expect others, those people that they misrepresent, to just sit back and tolerate it. As I said, I have nothing but kind words for anybody over there. It's wrestling business. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. But when we went into their promotion that time, they put that together. They wanted us to. And when we got there, the promoter that he had working at that time knew nothing about it. He didn't know why we were there. And we were like, well, he didn't tell you. So we were going to try to work together at that time. And so that was the one and only time that happened. And I feel like it was just a way to try to make himself look good, But I don't know. I go back a long way with that guy over there. He's got a lot of issues, and I wish him the best on it. Physically, he's got some issues, and he's a people pleaser. He wants to please people, and you can't please everybody. You got to let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes, and he's got a tough time with that. So anyway, I wish all of them the best. I don't want them to watch this and get something out, and then I look on Facebook or something, and here we go again. So yeah, I
will say for the record, me personally, I brought that up because I thought it was one of those work storylines where two promotions come together, kind of like WWF and ECW when ECW infiltrated Raw. But I realized very quickly after answering that was not a work. So my apologies.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, it could have been, but it's just this little town, Rome, Georgia, is a historic town for pro wrestling, and when you've got more than one promotion running in any town, there's going to be some heat. And so, it was expected, but it could have worked if it would have been, ran in a gentlemanly manner, because we begged to work together. We wanted to work together. We didn't want to destroy the business here in Rome. We don't want to do that. That'd be wrong. So a lot of the reasons Primetime isn't running is because it's mercy on the wrestling business. We don't want to hurt the it's not worth it to us. We could crank up again at any time if we want to, but it's just it's a matter if we want to, and that's what it's going to come down to, if we want to. So it's all good.
And I'm going to jump into a couple fan questions here. I want to say if anybody does want anything answered, put it in the chat. I can definitely see it. But we're going to start off with Gwen Hamlet. She said, "Hi Todd, what is the match including yourself you favor the most? Thanks."
What is the match including myself you favor the most? Meaning my favorite match?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mentioned me and my brother. Any match I've tagged with my brother in is stuff that I keep up here. I remember it. But if I wanted to really just talk about my favorite as a singles wrestler, and I've got something else I'll throw in there to answer that in just a second. But I had a series of matches real early with a guy named David Young. You probably know who that is. David had a good run in TNA. Worked a lot with AJ Styles, and but early on in his life and his wrestling career and my wrestling career, I think I was already in WCW, but I still say it was early. He and I had a series of matches, and to this day, he and I will talk about it. Don't we? There's a guy in North Carolina has every one of them on VHS tape, but refuses to give them to us. but I don't know. We begged him. But anyway, we talk about it as being some of the best wrestling matches we've ever had with anybody. And he's not blowing smoke. I'm not blowing smoke. He's been in the ring with a lot of guys. I've been in the ring with a lot of guys. And I would say that David Young is probably my favorite opponent of all time. I love him to death. He's like a brother. Um, but I will mention another guy that I tagged with, and they call him the War Daddy. Um, he's my brother. Love him. Still talk to him about every day. He and I had some of the most thrilling tag matches with people. We called ourselves the Texas Outlaws as well. He kind of took the guy's place on the. We had some great wrestling matches around Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, tag matches, and just had a blast. So they're among my favorites. So those two guys were involved in some of the favorites that I ever had, and that's not excluding anybody, because I had a lot of good ones, but those stand out.
And the next one I'm going to ask, I believe this individual got the name wrong, I think, because do you know there's a wrestler that worked in WCW up until 1994 by the name of Tom Zenk?
Yeah.
But this one, he said Tom Zane. This is where it gets a little weird, but I figured it's a fan question, might as well bring it up. I do say we're uncensored, so I'm just going to jump into it. Was Tom Zane able to roll up like roly-poly and suck his own peach?
Oh my God. I won't even.
Yeah.
Tom Zink was a nice guy. I'll tell you a good story about Tom. I was sitting at the bar with him. True story. His contract ran out that day, and we were having a drink, and I didn't know Tom real well. And but I was just sitting at the bar right beside him. He said, "Well, Zane, today's my contract ran out. It's my last day." I said, "Oh yeah, what are you going to do?" He said, "Not much. I got $700,000 in the bank, so I believe I'll be okay." So that was a little story I'll share about him. But he went on to have a pretty successful podcast, and I did some stuff. I like Tom Zink. He was a nice guy, but that question right there.
Yeah. I mean, you can't make this up, Todd. I mean, you can. I mean, I know there's a rumor back in the day, obviously not wrestling. Marilyn Manson supposedly could do it, but I mean, I don't know. I honestly, personally thought it was comical. That's why I brought it up. But I mean, wild questions you get. I mean, my chat's filled with that almost every interview. So I mean,
Wow.
a guess as good as your own there, Maximum. I mean, I guess you got to keep looking for that answer because we don't got it. But also as well, I got to say first and foremost, Todd, I think that's going to wrap up the fan questions for tonight. I mean, no more roly-poly questions, but I have to ask you. Obviously, I know you said you're doing family life right now. You did a little bit of primetime wrestling stuff in 2023, but what is next for yourself? Like, do you plan on kind of getting back into the ring at all, doing more promos, maybe making guest appearances? Like, what is next for yourself, Todd Zane? Like, is there anything we missed during tonight's interview?
Well, personally, I think I told you this before we began. I'm doing a lot of remodeling in my house. So the room I'm in right now, I just remodeled for my wife. This right here, right in front of me, shelves, and I transformed a closet into a workspace, and so I'm sitting here on her stuff. But so that's what I'm doing right now. She's a real estate agent, so we're flipping this one, so I may stay in it. As far as the wrestling world goes, I will tell you that we are throwing around something. Excuse me. It's going to be pretty big. Nobody will see it coming around here, but it'll be. Matter of fact, when you see it coming out, you'll want to. I'd like for you to do another one of these with the people that's involved, and you can help us kick it off. And so it'll be really good. Be really good. So I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but there is something coming for all you local people that's watching this.
And I won't pry anymore. I'll leave the cats definitely in the bag, and I'll leave it tied up with a nice little bow. But I will say, whenever it does when the cats do trickle out of the bag, definitely let me know. We can actually get all the people involved and do one big interview to actually help promote this, most definitely.
Oh yeah, man, I'd like that.
But I gotta say, Todd, before we actually part ways very quick, obviously I found you on social media. That's how we actually got connected and made this happen. But for the individuals that are your fans that still watch your old matches on YouTube and still have all the old WCW merchandise, how do they go about following you across social media? That way they can stay updated on this event that is currently confidential, but will be released to the public soon. And of course, everything else you got going on in your past and of course present as well.
Well, as far as following me, I'm Todd Zane Facebook. So that's about all I do is Todd Zane Facebook. When I do get on Facebook, it's not a lot, as you probably know. You've messaged me on there, and it's probably been days or hours or weeks. I might have got back with you, but and I apologize for that. But as far as fans go and stuff like that, hey man, I'm just shocked that I got any. And I appreciate every one of them. If somebody likes what I did, if they're looking up my stuff on YouTube and watching it, man, I'm just honored to have been able to do this. I'm blessed to have been able to do it. It's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of people. Had it not been for this pro wrestling thing, I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today on a lot of different levels. It taught me a lot about life and being a man, pretty much. So, but yeah, I appreciate all those fans. So thank you so much.
And Todd, I got to say thank you so much for this amazing hour of conversation, taking us on an amazing road trip through your luxurious career within the wrestling industry. Thank you so much for the conversation, the stories, and just sharing everything. Hopefully, we can make this happen again sometime soon. But for now, Todd, have yourself a wonderful rest of your Sunday night, and hopefully, we definitely shall talk again here soon. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate the honor of being on your podcast.
Hey, the honor is all mine, man. Thank you so much again, Todd. We definitely shall talk again here soon.
All right, buddy.